Hello there everyone, welcome back. It is time for match 4 of the championship there, as I am now facing off against Space Marines in Gentek, who is currently at the moment the #1 ranked player there in the championship, I believe. So this will be interesting. This will definitely be different perhaps, as immediately I don't really think about all that much there. I go straight into Space Station Assault, mainly because of how I've been going into the match so much there. I'm kind of familiar with how it plays out for the most part. So at least the idea seems solid there, or at least how my positioning all that's been working out pretty well. As I decide to field the Dictator, and I decide to fool around a little bit trying to get a sense of the points there before I ultimately field in the Overlords. It's kind of what I've been doing before, especially the last time I fought Space Marines there, because with the sheer lack of not really torpedoes, but the lack of defensive fighters there, this should go well for me in terms of my torpedo fleet. But the Dictator will be useful for dealing with the Thunderhawks and any boarding torpedoes he's inevitably going to be shooting at the space station. At least that's the thought anyway. So no one should be surprised with how I deployed it so far there. I'm going to put Dictator in the middle, Overlords in the sides, and we got ourselves a nice torpedo screen here. Ideally, I want to try avoid getting my ship shot there, hit by torpedoes, and let them fly on by to kind of maximize the amount of point defense I have before they ultimately hit something. So that's going to be, I'm going to be maneuvering around there as I just straight up just put mines in the gas clouds there. More and more I play with this kind of mindset here, I think it's the wrong choice, mainly because of the Widowmaker. So far in this championship, everyone has been pretty much not even trying to shoot the damn thing. So being able to reveal them is kind of not an issue. So I don't need to worry about deterring them from going to the minefield. So it remains to be seen how exactly I should use the mines. The most obvious one, I guess, if I'm not going to use them for gas clouds, is just block the most direct path. But all that really does ultimately is just stall a tiny bit. Just stalls a tiny bit there as already the torpedo wars begins. But remember, Space Marines don't really have the best in the torpedo defense there. So I'm looking at these ships here, 3 ships. He has 700 points, so I'm definitely thinking he had a battle barge of some kind there, but it's difficult to tell with the torpedo count. There is actually a difference, a very subtle difference in the way the torpedoes arc that kind of distinguishes a strike cruiser from a battle barge, but in this case, he actually went double battle barge, which I guess should be no surprise considering 3 ships for 700 points. But we're going to be in for a bit of a fight as I frantically shoot torpedoes trying to stick some damage in. And some of them are hitting there. I just haven't detected the second battle barge just yet, which, as made apparent, hasn't even taken any damage. So my torpedo assaults, despite all that, hasn't been working very well. Oh, I take that back. I was looking on the right there and it seems to have misled me. It actually took like about 50, maybe 100 points of damage. So there is some damage. It's just not very not damage that I would be happy with there, considering the lack of point defense as I mentioned before, or defenses in general with lack of fighters, as the Orcs had been showing me when I did my matchup with them. But one thing I immediately regret upon watching this is doing the silent running there, because for some reason I want to avoid them getting hit by boarding torpedoes there for some strange reason, although we know that's going to be so short-lived. Especially with him showing no signs of slowing down there, and with lack of mines to help deter him, he's going to dive in straight for an aggressive push. So having this silent running in exchange for a lock-on, or probably more realistically a brace for impact, is probably going to be noticed. I do block a good handful of the boarding torpedoes there. I don't know if there's like a minimum range to the boarding torpedoes, like with regular dumbfire torpedoes, but he still gets a boarding or 2 in at least, as we're in the thick of it now. And he did lock on, so my armor-piercing rounds are going to do respectable damage, especially for this one Overlord in the middle there. It's getting basically maximized damage against both these battle barges for the time being. But with me having to turn myself around there, I'm that's eventually going to change, especially with the shields starting to come back up. So, torpedoes are going out before the stasis bomb triggers, and we get ourselves a decent hit there. Probably 100 points from that, and an additional fire, so it's looking tenuous though. I'm not in the best position to block the shots if he decides to focus on the station, but damn. And I'm getting a damn good amount of damage in on this one battle barge at least. He is burning his micro warp jump, so I'm probably not going to get the opportunity to capitalize on this window where one battle barge is completely isolated, but he is focusing his attention on the battle station right now. Ooh, it's like at 300 health. It's at 300 health, and the one ship that could probably hit it with torpedoes, of course, has the damage prow, which, of course, surprise, surprise, is Space Marines with lock-on. He may not have favors or a chapter master on him, as I withhold, thankfully, the torpedoes that could have potentially hit my own battle station. But thankfully, there's no chapter master there, but still, that's a lot of damage, and apparently, I didn't even notice my dictator exploding a pile of rubble there. I know it was taking a lot of damage since it was like point blank range. It was literally scraping against the battle barges there, but considering that's probably my best weapon now that I think of it against the Space Marines, considering it has the bombers as well as the torpedoes for the armor penetration, it would probably have been very handy here, especially now that the battle barge, at least the second one there, has like almost no health to it. So having the bombers there would have been really reliable for locking it down, because now it's in a very awkward position. I'm going to have a difficult time not getting rid of it, especially with my prows gone. It's going to be a while before, well, I take that back. I'm heavily damaged, so I'm not even going to get that torpedo shot I want. So what was looking so promising, probably because of my lack of lock-on or even brace for impact there, I feel like things start unraveling just because of that one subtle thing. I'm sure there's been a couple of like little minor miscontrols things I've been doing, but I think that's the most felt right there for something that only lasted a good 10 seconds of keeping my ships invisible. I'm a little bit bitter about that, because as it's slowly becoming apparent, what seemed so promising at first, especially with armor-piercing rounds still in effect, I am not doing well here. The battle station is on all sorts of fire. That pretty much alone will be pretty close to burning down the battle station. As I make one final attempt to deal with this battle barge here, I decide to go full kamikaze with this. Although I do lack the boosters, which is another mistake that I made, so I can't even charge it. But I get the lucky shot, the one lucky shot I needed, with one lance and 4 macro batteries that kill his battle barge. At least one of them, which will be significant in upcoming rounds, if nothing else. It's the first time I really had a big downswing there, because against orcs, I deliberately, well, even against my first match against Space Marines, my losses were in situations I was in complete control of because I chose not to overcommit. But this time, I got trounced. It was looking really promising on the first couple of salvos there, because one of his battle barges is already half health, the other one's taking amazing damage. I was getting full value out of one of my overlords. It was looking promising there. My prows started going though. Again, the lack of brace for impact probably was the biggest factor in that battle, and I'm really bitter about that. Really damn bitter. But we are looking to the next round here. This should be no surprise what we're going to. We're going back to the space station assault for his choice. I am going to spoil right now. Apparently, this is the most common game mode. And I guess a lot of it comes down to, like I said before, the space station itself being really resilient and powerful with the 4 bombers at like only a 100-point loss overall to your fleet. And it's also, in a very subtle manner, that actually affects the best of 3. It also minimizes the number of ships you have to field. So if somehow you lose your fleet there, it's not as crippling as, say, if you were the attacker in this kind of engagement. So I'm feeling alright here with one of his battle barges out of the way. If he's going to rely on the double battle barge brute force strategy, he cannot do it anymore. And I still have my main fleet, my Devil Tyrants, my Retribution, so my power overall hasn't been hindered at all. I just lose the flexibility and options. So it's a little bit of a different situation, but it doesn't really hurt my ability to at least fight. Not until after I start losing ships, perhaps in this battle here. If I lose the Retribution, I have no heavy hitters, so that is something I am very mindful of. As I once again start spraying up my fleet for like the kind of crisscrossy torpedoes there. So that way, if he does field his battle barge, at least these torpedoes can coalesce onto it at multiple angles, especially hitting the side, where if I were fighting straight at it, or shooting straight at it, as I mentioned in the last video, it would only 2 torpedoes would pretty much hit, and the rest would probably fly on off. But in this case, it's likely that 3 or 4 torpedoes have the possibility of hitting, and this is for each cruiser, although most of them aren't even going to make it that far with the sheer amount of point defense, and he's going to have a lot of fighters to also help ward him off with the battle station, whereas before, as the attacker, he only had 2 Stormhawks and his point defense to rely on, so this is going to be a lot different in terms of my torpedo effectiveness. Although you could argue my torpedoes in the last round haven't really been stellar anyway, because the one battle barge hardly lost 100 health by the time it got really close anyway. So, hopefully, I get a little bit of better luck. And I'm stumbling my words a lot, damn it, for some reason in this video, and I'm not liking it. Or at least this commentary. I'm not liking one bit there. But, to leave you in suspense on what he's fielding, he actually chooses not to field the battle barge. Instead, he decides to field some of his vanguards and 2 strike cruisers, I believe. He doesn't commit fully to the 4 strike cruisers, probably because of the third match, the cruiser clash. He's going to need them for his battle barge when he does get to that round. If we get to that point, I still have to take down his station here, and so far, how have my first 3 matches been? I actually won the space station assault against Chaos there, but that was still a weird type of match. I still am at a loss of what his strategy, his composition, what he was going for in that. And I failed the space station assault against orcs, but I came out in the better end in terms of ships lost or ships destroyed. And I didn't even go space station assault in my first match against Space Marines. So, right away, we're getting hits with the torpedoes, which is always a plus, considering he has a bunch of fighters there. Yeah, about 50 points on the space station. I heard a repair from one of the ships there, and we are looking at 5 ships. As I said before, he's fielding vanguards and his strike cruisers, at least 2 of them there. I don't think he ever committed to a third, otherwise he would have maybe 4 ships with 600 points. And those 2 of them are frigates, but it should be 2 strike cruisers and the rest are vanguards. So he just sits there. It doesn't bode well for him if that is his fleet composition, though. It gives him a lot of options for Stormhawks, I won't lie, for shooting down torpedoes, but even then, that is a pitiful amount of fighters in comparison to what Orcs can field, what Chaos can field in terms of fighters, and all that, so I'm still in the better end. In fact, he seems like he's only firing a single torpedo at me, which of course is one of the strike cruisers I mentioned, so that just bodes better for me in the terms of this setup. As I once again do the Silent Ryan, I think I have this weird paranoia about boarding torpedoes for some reason, because after all 6 of those torpedoes can fly at my Retribution and hit them, whereas opposed to the dumbfires, there's like only a single one that hits, so that could be part of the reason why I'm Silent Running there a little bit. So maybe it's not as much of a bad move in the first match as I'm making it out to be, but I still feel bad considering that would have turned the match around quite significantly, I feel like. Turning my 25% chance to ignore his bombardment cannons and turning that into like a 45% chance, nearly a 50-50 chance to block his bombardment cannons is a big deal. It almost essentially doubles my survivability for that duration. So I feel like that, as I watch that, I feel like I made a horrible mistake, but maybe it's not as crazy as it sounds thinking more on it because of the boarding torpedoes. As a random stray torpedo shot ends up massacring the one strike cruiser and back. I was not aiming for it there, I was trying to hit the Vanguard that was charging at me there, as we're now in the thick of it. I am in really damn tight formation though, so all the Vanguards and their Thunderhawks are pretty limited in their potential. Everything's pretty much braced for impact though, but ultimately that doesn't mean too much drastic because he does not have his Chapter Master in his fleet, so this is still just the same 95% resistance, at least outside armor penetrating rounds, so he's not getting the complete immunity as he would before, not to mention the torpedoes are wrecking the one strike cruiser. The one that came in last is the first one to die. Don't ask me the logic of that, folks, it just happened. Okay, quite literally, it just happened. And of course, it had to explode on me. Thankfully, I did supercharge the void shield, so that absorbed a ton of the damage, but I tried to transfer a shield in this one Overlord, not realizing its generator actually died, because I thought the explosion killed the shields at the time when it happened. So I find out the hard way that it has no generators, which is going to play out quite a bit when I have to deal with the battle station once I clean up this mess. Because as it stands now, he's keeping these Vanguards in prime firing position for me to shoot at him. And with no brace for impact, even with 75 armor, he's still going to take a beating. Even with like one of the Retribution's macro cannons down. That thing is just as dangerous as an Overlord at least. With 3 lance cannons instead, which is still going to hurt. Especially when the Vanguards and strike cruisers have no shields. That's just going to rip right through his armor. I don't care how durable your Space Marine ships are supposed to be. When torpedoes and lances are hitting you and your ship's on fire, it's not going to survive. And of course, I give myself a bit of a... What happened there? Was that an insubordination? Oh, it canceled my warp. Oh, I think I was paranoid about losing my ships, because after all, my Overlords were down. I told you that before, how I don't really have much of a replacement at this point. I lose my flexibility and options, so I try to warp it out. I'm trying to keep my ships alive, but at the same time I need to win this match to keep things going. I fire a careful torpedo shot, but I think one torpedo still hit my Retribution as he makes fancy maneuvers to dodge that. He makes fancy maneuvers, but the strike cruiser's almost down, the Vanguard's almost down. Hell, its deck just got wrecked there. And I see the warp out, I see his Vanguard trying to escape. Double boarding will effectively cancel that, and it will die immediately after the next salvo or two that hits it. Hell, he just does the work for me as he rams it. Although, more exploding ships is not welcomed when I have 2 generators down. And that brings us to the really awkward situation here. Trying to fight the battle station when I have no shields to serve as a buffer. What I decide to do here is just play it slow and wait for my repairs to come back up. So I'm eventually going to just reload. Actually, I just reload right now there. Get my repairs back up, especially since he has no frigates at the moment. He just spawned them now, in fact, so I do have a window to do some damage here. Once I get my shields back up, as I'm doing right now, with the second Overlord, as its repairs are underway, the generator is back online. I am really, really tense, though, about keeping this Retribution alive. Because, as much as I want to warp it out and keep it alive, I also need its firepower for this kind of situation. I feel like I do anyway, because that battle station is still at full health, it has no critical hits on it, nothing of note, so I need the extra torpedoes, I need the extra firepower, so I am waiting for those repairs to come back up first. And as far as its health pool there, it needs to be at around, what is it, 170 health, I think about? 180 health rather, before it becomes heavily damaged. That reaches that 15% mark, so I'm sitting at about 300, and with repairs that'll put me at about 400, so I have a little bit of a buffer there, as these torpedoes just blow right by, and thankfully don't even do any damage to me, so I count myself lucky there. But if he continues to spawn these hunters or cobras, I forget what kind of ships or frigates they deploy for Space Marines. I'm assuming they're Cobras, considering it's an Imperial Navy battle station, but the more time I stall, it becomes apparent the more Cobras and torpedoes he has. But thankfully, I can easily maneuver around there, as you're promptly seeing with the Retribution. I just quickly shuffle it around, reposition it, so that way its torpedo damage is completely unhindered. Hunters, or was it Cobras, don't do anything there in that regard, so I'm good with it. And I try to continue my damage. Ideally, what I really want to do is have the torpedoes also hitting the Cobras as well as the battle station. At the very least, hitting the one that's in the middle. I don't know how well it's actually working, but the torpedo salvo is doing damage, as about a third of its health is down now. Torpedoes are colliding, I think, with the Cobra. It just hasn't exploded yet. Although there's still 4 fighter squadrons there, as I reshuffle the Retribution and kind of standing my ground with the Overlords a little bit, although I'm not quite in range to fire with my macro cannons yet, which is why I'm not turning just yet. I'm just keeping my prow there, so keep things simple that way. And I think my timing with the torpedoes is starting to get messed up, mainly because of the reload there. Because there is some weird glitch sometimes that if you try and fire the torpedoes as it's immediately when it's off cooldown, it sometimes won't trigger because it's still actually reloading. It just visually just looks wrong. For whatever reason, I'm not sure exactly how it functions. But we send the Cobra in there. It's probably a silly idea because I already know where the ships are. And I don't actually have the Widowmaker. I lost that in the skirmish, I believe, at some point in that battle. So that's pretty much why the Cobra's in there actually now. At least that way it allows me to use my macro turrets, and maybe this was a bad idea because I have been doing so well with my Retribution just turning out of the way that I decided to turn the Overlord to block the damage. 1 or 2 still hits the Retribution, but that Overlord took a crap ton of damage, and even with the repairs, this is like the second repair I had now since the actual battle with his cruisers. It does not repair my point defense, which is playing a little bit of a part here. Although I did not improve the Tech Priest for the Actually, I do have improved Tech Priest actually for the Tyrants. The Retribution does not. It has the Navigator instead, so with that second repair, it actually got a whopping 300 health, I think. Pretty damn close to 300 health, but it does not bring back the 3 point defense turrets it would have had otherwise. So I'm just about in firing range there. I'm trying to keep this Cobra count down as I start my slow push forward, because apparently those torpedoes are causing me a little bit of problems there, especially when he's so close there. The arc is kind of tight enough that all the torpedoes are actually hitting my ships. So this it's not looking good there for my Overlord, at least, as more torpedoes go flying on in. I do send down the count to, what, 2 Cobras? At least I'm seeing 2 Cobras, so at least now it's a much more manageable 4 torpedoes, but since I didn't bother to try to dodge those torpedoes any, I decided to warp out the Tyrant. It's really the Retribution I want to keep in play. And even though one of its macro batteries are kind of knocked out, I do turn it around when I finally get within firing range of the battle station, and it took a lot of damage. As slow and as uneventful as the past few minutes have been, I still have been doing work on that battle station, even if it was indirectly, since I kind of was trying to shoot down the Cobras as well. We're looking at below half health. I'm pretty certain his repairs are down, if not getting close to being recharged, so I'm now in a good firing arc. And what I do here in a few moments as I get myself ready for the next Cobra torpedo salvo, especially when he starts spawning his next wave of frigates, which he does right now, I start getting my Tyrant and my Dauntless to be my shield. I'm committing fully to this engagement now, focusing everything on the battle station. He's not even trying to block it with the Cobra, so Dauntless and Tyrant are now getting the way. At least trying to mitigate as much as they can of the torpedoes. Because right now the Retribution is hovering above, what, just under 300 health, I think? do I select this? 250 health. So if it loses about 70 more health, it's going to be heavily damaged. So it's important it does not take any torpedoes. And as I said earlier there, I do turn around to maximize its macro damage. As now comes the moment of truth. What's going to be very critical for the final match. Does my Retribution take the extra 60 damage it needs to be heavily damaged and no longer be available for the final round? Or do I kill the station in time? Because one of those torpedoes is not going to hit the turret. Oh, I take that back. It actually hit the tip of the engine. Wow, that I was not expecting. But it looks like we're safe. I got repairs back underway on the Retribution. It's hovering back at 300 health. We're looking good. There's no concern. I'm going to be at full fighting status there, I feel, going into the third round. It's, again, a little bit slow. Trying to be safe there, especially with all my ships crippled and low health and lacking their generators, I need to point out. Especially the poor Retribution. I don't have anything to force a good attrition battle that way, because any damage done to me is pretty much permanent without shields to kind of recharge and to transfer to, so it limits my abilities quite a bit there in terms of my durability. But second round is a victory. Maybe it's a bit of a sloppy one. It felt pretty effective though at dealing with his actual fleet. It's just trying to deal with his torpedoes. I should have done more of that dancing around, shuffling around, kind of like what I did with the Retribution. But as he got closer, what is it, almost within 6,000 unit range, I wouldn't have had the time to get out of the way though, so that's when I would have to commit. But before that though, I really should have been trying to dance around. That's probably the big mistake there, even if it didn't cost me the game. It did cost me warping out a Tyrant though, as one of my overlords actually survived because of the station being destroyed. For some reason I was playing it off as my entire fleet got destroyed, because of how crushing a defeat that was. But there's no suspense here. We know what he's fielding. I already know what he's fielding. There's no surprise. None whatsoever. He lost like 3 Vanguards. He lost 2 of his strike cruisers. There's only one thing left for him to field with a 700 point battle. It is the Bane that survived and cost me the first match, mainly due to my own misplays, I feel like. At least that's how I've been playing off. But again, it's still a question of if the boring torpedoes are as serious a threat as I'm making it out to be. Especially since I had a Dictator, I had 4 fighter waves behind me. Maybe I should have let that go. So I'm a little bit back and forth. Without a doubt though, watching the replay, watching what unfold, I think we can all agree the brace for impact at the very least, maybe the lock-on if I felt I could have got away with it, would have been the better choice. It just comes down to would the lock-on have gotten me any critical hits that would have been played a major part there though. Because if it didn't, then that lock-on basically does nothing at that close of a range. You kind of need it to give me critical hits for it to get value. Otherwise it's just better for hitting accurately a long range. So, 5 ships here, 2 strike cruisers, 1 battle barge, and he's got, what, 2 hunters, 2 gladiuses or something? Yes, Admiral. Which is a bit odd there. I don't realize it at first there, but when I've been playing as my Space Marine fleet, I don't have the points to field 2 frigates. And the reason for that is, his 2 strike cruisers are actually the Mark III variant. The 2 with the lances that are like just hovering over 140 points, so that's how he's able to afford that 2nd frigate. Yes, Admiral. As I point over to the biggest cluster I got there, I'm just kind of firing blindly in that direction though, just trying to get as many targets as I can. And I do see the battle barge in the back there, although I don't really focus my attention on that. I'm just trying to soften him up as much as possible, thinking he would try to avoid them effectively. So, I keep hugged around this gas cloud. I ignore the benefits of his boring torpedoes, or at least him being able to shoot boring torpedoes, although they're still flying towards me there. It seems contradictory to everything I said there, that I'm hitting, yet I'm not even trying to dodge these boring torpedoes that are making their way to me right now. Although most of them are still going to miss, it looks like anyway, so... I guess it was the right choice to stay there. As I do fire more torpedoes, I don't fire with the Dauntless though, as I'm trying to turn it into the gas cloud there. Get in a good position, and we see the first two gliders. We see a Mark III strike cruiser there, so we continue with the torpedo fire and get ready in a few moments after my next torpedo wave to fire the macro weaponry. I'm just waiting for a timer for torpedoes now, trying to maximize my damage a little bit. And while that torpedo arc may not have been the best, I was kind of trying to, again, maximize the amount of targets I hit. It doesn't really do much, as one torpedo doesn't even do damage, I think, on the strike cruiser, and only one torpedo hits the frigate. Although I do get one or two torpedoes on the battle barge and back that is now making its way over. So, the engagement has begun. My lock-on's underway. I'm trying to kill them, do as much damage as I can here. Even with the brace for impact on these Gladiuses there, they still only got, what, 75, 80 armor with the Chapter Master, because now he brought in his favorite ships. The Librarian and Chapter Master is here, and the Battle Barge is coming to play with already 200, 250 of its health gone, so at the very least, the torpedo runs on the Battle Barge have been very successful as hell. Even my Cobra managed to get both its torpedoes to hit. I don't think it did damage, but that's probably the best value out of a Cobra yet. And probably in this run the championship anyway. But I move on forward. I pretty much don't care about these stasis bombs so much there, because I don't really plan on moving a whole lot. And since he lacks lances or anything to really punish these stasis bombs, I don't think there's a huge risk just yet, aside for him being able to get in a position of his choice. The bombardment cannons do eat the shields of the Dauntless though, so the transfer paid off there nicely, avoiding potential critical hits, as I'm trying to maximize my fire as much as I can here. Although, I am focusing my efforts on the strike cruiser, because I am ignoring the juicy battle barge that just locked on. It's at practically half health, it's locked on, which means it has no armor bonus. So, this is where things probably start to get a little bit rough for me there, because I'm not prioritizing my targets effectively. Hell, I don't even think I realized that these are Lance-Fearing strike cruisers, so that probably could change how I played this out a little bit different. As I send my tyrant to try and block as many of the boarding torpedoes as possible there, because again, my Retribution is still my biggest powerhouse here, as I'm trying to get the fire with both his sides here. We do get an amazing torpedo salvo off on that thing, on the chapter, with the Librarian. But I try to avoid the shields block there, at least on the Retribution. Sadly, the Ram does nothing because of 100% armor reduction for the brace for impact, but you can start to see how this is probably hurting me more than it's helping. Because the lock-on still has about 15 seconds left, another salvo of bombardment cannons, and with lack of generator on this one tyrant here, another salvo of guaranteed critical hits is basically going to kill that thing almost. Hell, it's already dead because of the fires alone. But I do get some retribution. The Chief Librarian's gone at the same time there. His ships are a little bit in worse shape than mine due to health advantage there, but I am missing one of my torpedoes, which is going to be a big factor for the remainder of this fight, I think. A big factor. My Retribution is getting full value, but there's a lot of net wreckage now in the way, as my own tire's threatening to block some of my shots. Hell, even the strike cruiser is doing the morbid thing and pushing his fellow comrade aside, so you don't want to be what is it, Gentek's Space Marines there. They have no respect for their dead comrades. But one thing I'm really happy about is I used the wreckage to block the battle barge's boarding torpedoes there. I am really happy with that maneuver that I caught that, but it does cost me a good salvo of macro cannons that could have otherwise hit a potentially vulnerable battle barge. It doesn't really get hindered this time, but damage is still showing there for my overlords, as now its generator's gone. It's about to be wrecked. Lock-on's back on. what was looking promising, due to lack of torpedoes, especially for my retribution, is not going well. And now the final generator is gone there. What is that? That's a permanent destruction there. I have no shields to block critical hits. Especially now that his own shields come back up. So, it's not looking good. The critical hits are mounting, especially now that he has Thunderhawks boarding me as well. Completely unhindered. All 9 of them, I think, just board me. And now we're looking at 2 of my lances gone, 2 of my macro batteries gone, and those bombardment cannons are doing work due to the fact I have no shield. So I have to face the very real possibility that I'm going to lose this match. Even if I were to kill the battle barge, I still have to deal with a strike cruiser at half health. It was looking so damn promising just because of how low health that battle barge was, but I did this stupid thing. I chose to go after a strike cruiser that had brace for impact. I should have focused entirely on that battle barge, especially with it isolated. Completely isolated, a couple of torpedoes, especially since it took so much damage so early on too. I feel like I could have done that so much more differently. Hell, even the first round there with both his battle barges at low health, one of them getting destroyed mainly due to a lucky salvo, but still. My battle station when that match ended was about to launch its bomber squadron, and if 10, 15, 20 seconds of that match, the first round alone could have changed that if those bombers had done a beautiful bombing run on that battle barge. Never mind how destroying that first battle barge that I destroyed could have avoided a lot of damage. I'm really bitter about that, but we must continue on.